Hello, my name is Brian and I'm a writer. I have over 25 books published on Amazon. Welcome to the next chapter in this series. This is called Present Day, Chapter 19. Chapter 19, Present Day. Philip's dreams that night were more disturbing than usual, though he could not remember anything about them by morning. His only clear recollection was of being chased. He never saw what was chasing him, although he knew that to be caught meant mortal danger to himself. He woke soaked with sweat and his breath catching in his throat. He placed his feet on the floor and looked around the room wearily. He pulled on the same clothes he wore yesterday and looked out the window. He was surprised to see that it was still dark outside. He put one hand against the window frame and sighed. The details of Kyle's story flooded into his mind, and he felt goose pimples forming on his arms and the back of his neck. He made his way to the front door and grabbed a jacket against the drizzle falling outside. He walked to the highway and then found the overgrown trail that Kyle had shown him. He kept walking and eventually found himself outside the cabin where Kyle was staying. His shoes were soaked. So too were his pant legs up as far as his knees. He made this trip because he had questions he wanted to ask, and there was only one person he knew who could answer them. He knocked on the door and it was opened almost immediately. Father Kyle stared at him in alarm, and then looked past him to see if anyone or anything had followed him. "I'm alone," Philip said. Are you sure?" Kyle asked nervously. "I'm alone. Trust me." Kyle stared into his eyes intensely for a moment, and then relaxed. "You're right. Somehow I think you would know if that thing followed you." Philip scowled and pushed any thoughts of madness out of his mind. Then he breathed in deep and tried to act calmly. "Really? How would I know that?" "I don't know. I think you're, I don't know, touched somehow." "Touched?" Kyle shook his head quickly and a small chuckle escaped his lips. "Never mind. Come in." Inside, the place looked much the same as yesterday. The blankets on the bed were tucked neatly onto it, and it appeared that no one had slept in it. Kyle followed his gaze and shrugged self-consciously. "I didn't sleep last night," he said. "I couldn't." "Why not?" "That thing visits me in my dreams all the time now." Philip grunted a response and sniffed. "What happened to Brother Charles?" he asked. A terribly sad expression came over Kyle's face, and he looked like he was about to weep. "He was only 17. He's just a boy. He was a simpleton after he met the demon. His mind was gone. I told you at one point that he died. I think he would have been better off if he had. He was taken to a facility for the feeble-minded. As far as I know, he's still there to this day." "What about Mrs. Fitz?" Philip asked. "According to your story, she hated Father Jacob when he first came. Since I met her, she's been nothing but dedicated to the man. What happened?" Kyle harumphed and shrugged. "I've wondered about that too. The only conclusion I can come to is that she was convinced he cast the demon out of the priest's hole. She's the most devout Catholic I've ever known. The only person she would know capable of casting out demons was Jesus Christ. If Father Jacob did the same, her estimation of the man would have risen considerably. And that is why she dedicated her life to serving him for the past 25 years. You said you and Father O'Brien saw the demon when you went into the basement. Kyle shuddered and nodded. We did, both of us. And I had nightmares for weeks after that. I saw it again the day Jacob died. What? Philip exclaimed. You never said that before. I couldn't. I'm surprised I can tell you about it today. But like I said, I think you've been touched somehow. What does that even mean? Kyle smiled and put a hand on Philip's arm. Never mind. It'll come to you eventually. When you need it most, it'll come. Philip rolled his eyes with frustration. Why don't people just say what they mean? Why does everything have to be a riddle? Kyle shook his head and smiled widely. Don't worry, Philip. It's a good thing. He would say nothing more about it after that. No matter how hard he pressed, he could get nothing more out of him. I have to get back to St. John's. I have a mass to lead. Kyle's eyes went wide and his breath caught in his throat. He sat back in his chair and stared at the young priest. I suppose, he muttered. I imagine if anyone could do it, you could. Thanks, Philip said sarcastically. He stood and went to the door. He saw that dawn had arrived. There was a thin drizzle falling, and it gave the world a grim appearance. He turned to look back at Kyle. Are you coming? The elderly man shook his head rapidly and sat on the bunk. No, he mumbled. I can't do that. Philip scowled and walked back to the chapel. The church felt big and empty when Philip returned. He made coffee for himself and sat down in the kitchen to drink it. Outside, the day suddenly went dark. The sun had been hidden by clouds all day, but now the sky turned almost black. He went to the back door and stared out the window. The rain started to fall, and soon it was coming down in sheets. The wind picked up and started beating the rain against the windows. The patter became loud in the big empty church, and Philip scowled at the weather. Maybe no one will show up for Mass, he mumbled. He wandered towards the front door and looked outside. In the large yard, branches, leaves, and other things blew around. They were scattered here and there, and Philip allowed himself to be hypnotized by the wind's randomness. As he watched, he saw lightning flash in the distance. The sound of thunder came soon after. The lightning flashed again, and he briefly saw the reflection of something standing behind him in the hallway. He turned with his eyes wide and his heart racing, and the crash of thunder startled him. He stared up the hall towards the kitchen, but it was empty. The face he had seen in the reflection did not belong in this world. He grimaced as the words of Father Kyle came back to him. There are hidden things that exist in this world, things that should never have survived the flood. Now I'm going crazy too, Philip mumbled. The disfigured face he saw in the reflection certainly looked like something that should not have survived the flood. He then walked as calmly as he could into the chapel. He stared at the large gold cross for several minutes, and then grabbed the pole it was attached to. He picked it up out of its cradle and returned to the hallway leading to the kitchen. He stared intensely into the grayness, and then walked slowly towards the back door. Just when he passed the door to the basement, lightning flashed and a booming crack of thunder sounded. It was so loud he heard the windows rattle. He almost jumped out of his skin, and he stared hard at the door. He was tempted to open it, and another crash of thunder came. This time he did jump. His feet actually left the floor, though not by much. His heart was racing again, and he decided to stop this game of chicken with forces he did not quite believe in or even understand. He returned to the chapel and placed the cross back where it belonged. Then he went to his room and retrieved his white cassock. The white cassock was intended to be worn by an acolyte, not by a priest leading the Mass. But he somehow felt like an imposter if he put one of Father Jacob's cassocks on for Mass. He studied himself in the mirror and felt inadequate. Father Kyle told him he had been touched somehow. He frowned and looked himself over again. He did not feel touched. He only felt like himself. No matter how hard he looked, he never saw anything special. He stepped away from the mirror, still feeling inadequate. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again soon.